Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another module in the syndicate. Today, we're going to be talking about the closing framework, okay? How you should be going about your discovery calls and your strategy calls. And potentially, if you have, maybe a little bit of a longer sales process just because of the type of clientele you maybe work with, what that should actually look like, how you should carry yourself in these calls, and making sure that you are going through some very, very important information to, get as much information and data on that business to identify if they're a good client to want to partner with. B, making sure that, again, it's a good culture fit. And then C, being able to utilize a proper framework to actually close a sale. Okay. A lot of people are really good at getting information, being nice on calls, doing things like that. But when it comes to closing, they're not so good. Okay. So module itinerary for today. Obviously, for discovery calls, we're going to be walking into some information there. For follow-up calls, whether that's, maybe you do a 2-call close, maybe you have, multiple close calls, that's totally fine. And then the script plug and play that we use. Okay. So we actually have plug and plays for both discovery calls and strategy calls. We believe more so in the 1-call close or 2-call close. Again, there are, unique situations where it may take a few extra meetings to actually close a client just because they have to put things on maybe on hold for like the next month, or they have a serious objection that maybe prolongs the sales process. Okay, but nonetheless, 2-call close is what you should be aiming for as a hygiene standard. Okay, so let's get right into today's lessons plan. All right, so everyone's sales process needs to be tailored to them. However, the below information is a framework that you should aim to follow. Okay, the script I provide is one you need to adjust to your offer and to your service, right? It's really, really important. This is a framework. You're going to have to go into these scripts, especially the plug and plays that we provide you, and adjust them to your liking, and make sure that the framework is still in its same sort of step-by-step process, but making sure that you're changing up the lingo and changing up everything to make sure that it aligns with your messaging, your service, your offer, whatever it is, okay? So let's call it the elephant in the room first, okay? So you should only be on 2 calls max to close a deal, okay? Like I said, there are unique scenarios where you meet with a potential lead, excuse me, if you meet with a lead and you're carrying that conversation, and by the end of that, maybe that second call where ideally you should be closing them, they have an actual objection, which is like, listen, like, we are in a little bit of like a financial situation where like we're waiting for VC funded money to come in, or just literally anything, or like there's like a stocking issue happening like at their company where they're like, listen, we're an e-com brand, we don't have stock right now, but our stock is coming in 2 weeks, can we just get started then? You can identify what is an actually credible and viable objection. Okay, sometimes, and I'd say most of the time, most objections are not actually objections. But there are certain scenarios, okay? So you should be aiming for a 2-call close. I actually think that with some of the more information that we come out with later on in the module, especially the Google Doc close that we're going to provide you guys, you can be closing deals in 1 call max, okay? So don't feel like you need to rush this process if you genuinely need time to provide them with a custom quote, okay? Aim for the 2-call close, but if there needs to be more, it's totally fine. Okay, so sometimes you might need to crunch some numbers to offer a proposal. For the most part, a typical structured pricing can work. This does take time and skill to develop. Okay. So just make sure that if you're a service that is pretty cookie cutter and you can offer cookie cutter pricing, that's one thing. But if you are the type of business where you have to take into account some of this business's data first to actually provide them a proposal, it may take a little bit of time. Or once you get good, you can just kind of do it on the fly, do it right there in the moment. Okay. Now, your one and only goal with sales call is to identify if your agency can actually serve that client's needs, and you must be able to listen to them first to identify this. Okay, I can't stress this enough. Way too many people just kind of like they utilize scripts and they almost rely on scripts, right? It's like they're kind of just going through the motions of that sales call and they're kind of like acting like robots, right? The biggest thing is like the script is a framework and it should guide you through that conversation. But most importantly is you should be listening to people during these calls, okay? If you're listening to people, you're going to get more information to help you actually navigate that conversation, all right? Now, let's talk about discovery calls, okay? So what's the point of a discovery call? Point of a discovery call is if you're following basically a 2-call close. Discovery call is you want to identify the strengths and weaknesses about that business. You want to get a feel for how this business is doing and if they're genuinely serious about making progress. People love the idea of achieving results, but 99% of people just don't like the process that it takes to actually get there. So you need to be able to weave out the people that actually are willing to put in the work, okay? And you need to make sure they seem motivated to actually go on that journey with you to achieve the goals that they've set. Okay. You want to ask logical questions to understand the ins and outs of the business so you can fundamentally identify if you can serve them. Okay. It's really, really important. So an example of this is if they have, shitty creatives and crappy copy, which is clearly the, leading to basically a poor click-through rate, and a poor CPM, right? You now know that that's a major bottleneck in their business. And this is something that if you fix, you can improve their entire customer journey. Okay. And you can mention this later on in your call. Okay. You want to ask questions that create emotional buy-in. Okay. So most people never take the time to ask themselves the deep questions. All right. So dig deeper and get to the root cause of why they want to achieve X result. All right. It's really important that you dig deep for this. All right. Without being weird. There is a line. Okay. Now, once you understand a business's strengths and weaknesses and the owner that you're speaking to has given you enough emotional buy-in, you can give them a ton of free value. Okay. Form of maybe like tips and tricks. Maybe for you to have gotten them on the call, you're offering them some sort of free audit, some sort of free SOP, whatever that is, right? You can give them that free value. All right. But the most important thing is you now have all their information. So now you can actually begin to point out their bottlenecks and what you and your agency can do differently to provide solutions. Okay. Really, really important that you have to connect the dots of here's your bottlenecks. Here's where you're failing and you're failing to perform as a company. And here's how my agency can actually provide your solutions. These are the solutions and how my agency can provide them to get you to X result, which you have told me that you want to achieve. Okay. You need to make that very clear. And finally, you want to identify if this business that you can serve, if this is a business that you can serve and that you would want to work with. Okay. So again, if you feel like you can help a business and the owner that you've spoken to, and the owner gives you very good vibes, you can make them aware that you can move forward in the sales process. And, based off of that, you can describe to them what that looks like, right? Again, every single one of you, this process is going to look a little bit different. So if you feel like you can do a one-call close, I'd highly encourage it. Like I said, in the next module that we have planned, we're going to walk through a Word doc close, which is basically like a full-blown discovery call. It might be a little bit longer than a traditional discovery call, just because you're basically walking through a document that showcases your process and everything, okay? But let's say after that first discovery call, you've got enough information about that client and you feel confident that this is a brand that you want to move forward with, okay? From there, you can move forward and schedule in a follow-up strategy call. Okay. The follow-up strategy calls basically walk through the business's backend and the analytics and data. Okay. So with e-commerce and info brands, we will actually walk through their ad accounts with them over Zoom to identify what is currently being done. Okay. It's a way for us to kind of like reassure that like the data that they've given us is actually accurate. And we can actually see those metrics up close and personal to make sure that like, okay, these are some pretty noticeable bottlenecks. If we fix these, we'll see better results. Okay. Don't spend a ton of time on this. The goal here is to confirm what they've told you is accurate and make you aware of anything else that may be going on in the back end of their business, which you can use as leverage to help them. Okay. Again, you might find more bottlenecks as you kind of, go through their ad accounts or go through the back end of their business and start kind of pulling on things. And this is all information that you can use as leverage to mention as bottlenecks to them and how your agency can come in and meet them with a solution. Okay. So again, with follow-up strategy calls, it allows you to deepen emotional buy-in. So make them dead set on, working with you. You want them to believe that you are the only solution to their problems. Again, like this is a really big thing. Like a lot of people, they'll just kind of identify bottlenecks and they'll say like, here's your solutions, but they don't mention the fact that their agency provides those solutions. So you need to connect the dots and make sure that your agency is at the forefront of that. Identify their bottlenecks, provide the solutions, and then let them know that our agency can provide these solutions. Okay. Make them more aware of your unique process. Okay. Your unique process is the solution to their problem and what separates you from your industry competitors. Okay. Present your pricing with confidence, handle potential objections, and then send the onboarding information to onboard the client. Okay. Like I had mentioned. So in this aspect, when you are making them aware of your unique process, this is where you would transition into the Google Doc close, which we're going to get into in the next module, just because there's a lot of information in it that I want to be able to cover with you guys. So it deserves a separate module, but it's really, really important that you are able to transition to just making it very logical for these business owners to move forward with you. Okay. A lot of people, I think earlier on in the agency space back in like 2019, 2020, people would rely on like these emotional strategies and tactics to get clients to like buy in and close. The reason why you want emotional buy-in is so that you can actually identify that this client is serious about their business. Okay. They're serious about the business and they're now in the mind frame to want to actually take steps forward to find solutions. That's the only reason why you're creating emotional buy-in. Okay. It's not to like psychologically like, mess with someone to like actually opt into working with you. That's not the goal. The goal is to create that buy-in and actually like let them know, make them aware of, the goals that they want to achieve in the future, whether it's on a personal level or a business level, and let them know that they can actually achieve that if they start moving in the right direction to providing solutions to their current bottlenecks. Okay. That's why you have emotional buy-in. But you need to be good at selling logically. Most business owners will see something that is logical and it'll just make sense. Like I've never met a super successful agency owner that just relies on emotional buy-in to close clients. Like you need to logically be able to show someone something that makes sense for them to move forward. Okay. Those are smart business owners. Smart business owners are ones that move forward on logic because they understand the numbers. They understand what makes sense. Emotional buy-in doesn't draw them in as much. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we actually do have 2 plug and plays for you guys. Again, I highly encourage you guys like utilize these as a framework and adjust them to the best of your abilities to align with your messaging, your offer, your guarantee, your service, and your agency. Okay. You will have to go in here and adjust these quite a bit. But for those of you that are getting started and maybe you just, you don't quite know how to lead these sales calls, these will provide as a really good framework for you to actually move forward with. Okay. So basically all you have to do is come here, click this open, and then basically just come in here. And as you can see, there's tons of information that'll enable you to basically just lead these conversations much, much better. Okay. And again, like I had mentioned in previous modules as well too, we're always going to be updating these based off of like what we as an agency are doing in our own sales calls. And so if we make updates to this discovery call meeting script or the strategy call meeting script, we will provide those updates to you guys in the Discord. Okay. So all you have to do, come here, click this open, and then basically go into file and then click make a copy and it's yours. And then you can just basically adjust it to your liking. All right. Now, action steps for today. Okay. Study the scripts that I provided, make adjustments to the scripts based off of your offer and your service. Okay. Make sure you follow the framework at the very minimum. All right. It's really important that you follow these frameworks because again, if you don't have a framework or some sort of guideline in these sales calls, your calls are going to be very sporadic. You won't be able to have proof of concept, and it's going to be very difficult for you as an agency owner to actually scale this because you have to think the sales is a big system and department in your agency. Okay. It's a huge component of why your agency will actually succeed. Okay. And ideally the goal is to get to the point where you actually have someone managing your sales processes at your business. Okay. You don't want to be the go-to guy that has to be in every single sales call. You want to be able to, hand this responsibility off to someone. Okay. So it's really important that you actually have a framework and you've built proof of concept where you can actually say like, you know what, based off of the script and the framework we use, we're closing this many leads on a given month. Right. And then that's something that you can actually present to someone that you're hiring for sales and hand off to them. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys have any questions about your sales calls, your strategy calls, your Word document closes, literally anything, even like objections and stuff, because I know that that's a big one for you guys, let us know in the Discord. Me and my team are happy to help as always. And I'm sure the community has gone through thousands of discovery calls and strategy calls. So they can always provide you guys advice as well too. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed the module and we'll see you guys in the next one.